Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We were working out a couple of technical issues. This is Veronica O'Hearn with the Iowa Arts Council, and we thank you for joining us for the virtual opening reception of the 20 Artists, 20 Parks exhibition. The program is a partnership between the Iowa Arts Council, a division of the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, and Iowa State University. We are excited to celebrate Iowa's artists and state parks with you, albeit virtually through tonight's event. If there's one thing this pandemic has shown us, it's that Iowa's artists and natural areas are more important than ever, not only to our well-being mentally, but also to our society as a whole. To give you a little bit of background about the project, Iowa's park system began 100 years ago when Backbone State Park was dedicated on May 28, 1920, and has grown to encompass 72 parks and forests across the state. In celebration of that anniversary, we paired 20 faculty and graduate students from Iowa State University with 20 parks to create artwork during summer residencies in 2019. State parks selected for the project represented diverse ecological, geological, and cultural experiences that make Iowa unique. The resulting artworks inspired by the parks have been curated into this exhibition that we hope, but may not continue to tour throughout the state this year and next, with stops scheduled for the Dubuque Museum of Art, the Clarinda Carnegie Art Museum, and the Sioux City Art Center. Additionally, each artist plans to share a program about the artist in residency experience with parks and park staff this summer. This evening, John Mark Failmeyer will take us on a virtual tour through the exhibition, which includes 29 artworks and is currently installed at Polk County Heritage Gallery in Des Moines. We will also be hearing from a number of artists involved in this project, and we encourage you to use Facebook chat to share your thoughts about the artworks, as well as any questions you have for the presenters or participating artists. Lindsay Keast on our team here at the Iowa Arts Council will be monitoring the Facebook chat and will share your questions with the artists this evening. So to kick off the reception, I would like to introduce Todd Kofelt and Julie Taft from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources to tell you about the centennial anniversary, as well as how you can continue to celebrate throughout the year.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Todd Kofelt, the Bureau Chief for the State Parks, Forests, and Preserves Bureau with the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. This is a special time for us to be able to share with you the partnership that came from a great idea with the Department of Cultural Affairs, Iowa State University, and people who really care for the resources around the state. As we kicked off the 2020 anniversary with Iowa State Parks, we had first day hikes on January 1st that many of you participated in, and that was an activity from one of our themes. If we take a look at our plan and the 5 themes that we have healthy lifestyles, we have history and culture, we have lend a hand, we have a welcoming place, and we have nature's wonders as the themes of the activities that are going to take place. As we're able to move through the COVID-19 situation that is inspiring all of us to get outside more, those activities, 100 activities, will be taking place across the state of Iowa throughout the calendar year. So plan your calendars accordingly and make sure you go to the website for the Iowa DNR, and you'll be able to find out more about the calendar and take advantage of those unforgettable experiences that will be taking place. Now, Julie?
I just want to say the same thing, that this is an exciting time of year, even though things are a little bit different than what we thought they would be as far as celebrating the 100th anniversary of our Iowa State Park system. But we know that everybody out there just loves our state parks, and we just really appreciate the support from all of our visitors, but then also all of our partners that have done so much to help us celebrate. So we just want to thank all the partners, Iowa State University, Department of Cultural Affairs, the Heritage Gallery, for making this possible tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd and Julie. So before we kick off the tour, I do have a few individuals to thank as well who made this project possible. Obviously, Todd and Julie and their team at the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, Nancy Thompson and Heather Sauer with Iowa State University, Lindsay Keast with the Iowa Arts Council, Director Chris Kramer with the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs, and our exhibition hosts, Michelle Engler, John Mark Failmeyer, and John Lemons with the Polk County Heritage Gallery, David Schmitz, whom we have recruited back to the Iowa Arts Council and is now our new administrator, as well as Stacy Peterson with the Dubuque Museum of Art, Trish Bergen with the Clarinda Carnegie Art Museum, and Todd Behrens with the Sioux City Art Center. I'd also like to thank the artists and park staff who have participated in this project, and thanks to all of you for watching and supporting their work. So with that, we are going to go ahead and kick off the gallery tour with John Mark over at Polk County Heritage Gallery.
All right, here we go. Welcome to the Polk County Heritage Gallery. So our first artwork that we're going to be looking at is by Slinda Stammy from Ames, Oil on Canvas, based on Palisades Kepler State Park in Mount Vernon. Our next piece is by Nathan Dean Edwards, Larkin Valley Trail from Yellow River State Forest in Harper's Ferry.
Hey, John Mark.
Yes.
We got a request on Facebook to also read the medium of the piece, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. The last one was Oil on Canvas, I believe, and Mr. Edwards' painting is collage painting and drawing. And I'm going to do my best to get a good angle. There is some reflection from our windows here in the gallery. This piece is also by Nathan Dean Edwards called Bluff Trail Collage Painting Drawing, also around Yellow River State Forest and Harper's Ferry. This next piece is by Kristen Gredeman. I believe we have her on the line. Wildcat Den State Park is the name of the piece and also the park that it was based on. And it's digital photography with Thai Kozo paper mounted on acrylic. I imagine she'll have a lot more to say about that.
Yes, and we are welcoming Kristen now. So welcome, Kristen. We'll go back and forth between your video and your artwork. So if you could just tell us a little bit about the work that you made and your experience during the residency, that'd be great.
Yeah, hi everybody. Can you hear me, Veronica?
Yes, yep.
Yeah, good. So I visited Wildcat Den State Park. I should say this is my partner, Clark. He has a piece also in the exhibit, so he'll be talking a little bit later. But we visited our parks in April and May of last year. And I normally do kind of traditional printmaking work on a printmaking press. I also do digital photography and cyanotype photography work. And for this piece, I wanted to try something new. So I did cyanotype and digital photography, which is what you can see on each of the fins, is what I'm calling them. So it's the series of fins, and they're oriented vertically, kind of a play off of this idea of a deep map, which is a series of layers of information. I included topography, geography. The park has a really fabulous historic mill, and so I included photos of parts of the mill, the floor plans of the mill, information about the mill, that you can tour the mill when you go to the park, and there's a really great friends group that keeps the mill up and running. And then I also included flora and fauna, which is what you can see there on the bottom. So each of the fins, they're double-sided, and I wanted the piece to be spatial, and I wanted you to be able to move around it, and I wanted it to be able to move. So I imagine when there's people walking around the room, the fins, they can turn and twist and move as they want. So it's the first time I've ever created a spatial piece like this, a 3D piece. And it was really fun. So for me, this is test number 1 of hopefully many more to come.
Great, thanks, Kristen.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It doesn't look like we have any more questions for her right away, but if you do think of them as you are watching the rest of the video, we will keep Kristen on the line and come back to her. So feel free to send those to us. Thank you. Turn it back to John Mark now.
Now we're looking at Barbara Walton's work. The Wait is the name of this piece, based off of her experience at Pikes Peak State Park, oil on panel.
And we did have a question come in generally about the program in terms of how the artists and parks were paired together. And that is something we asked all of the artists if they had a preference, a particular park that they were interested in, and let them select based on the list that was provided by the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. And those that didn't have a preference were then just randomly assigned. But you'll see as we move along, particularly with some artists like Robert Wallace or Joe Munch, that their work really relates to the content and the types of natural resources that are at the park. So it was really important for certain artists to spend time in certain areas.
And this is another piece by Barbara Walton, Point Anne at Pikes Peak State Park, also oil on panel. Then our next piece here is by Robert Wallace, the beauty within based on Lake Darling State Park, made with walnut wood.
And we do have Rob with us today too. So we will turn it over real quickly to Rob for some words about his work. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Veronica, and hello, everybody out there. Welcome to my studio up in Ames, Iowa. And I'm here just to give a brief overview of the inspiration and the creation of the piece that I'm calling The Beauty Within. The park that I was assigned was Lake Darling State Park. I had never been to Lake Darling State Park. I've been in Iowa just about 30 years, and I've never been to Lake Darling State Park. So it was a very pleasant and pleasurable introduction to that park, which is in southeast Iowa in the metropolis of Brighton, Iowa. And I was given early in the summer, I was given a tour by Nick Young, who is the park manager, and who he took me around and showed me basically all areas of the park. And at that time, that tour that he gave me, I was able to get an appreciation for the forest that surrounds the centerpiece of the park, which is the lake itself. And then as a botanist here at Iowa State, I was impressed with the hardwood stands that were around the lake. And particularly dominant in those hardwood stands was the black walnut. And when I inquired early when becoming involved with this program of if I could use some of the actual material from the parks, there is a law that requires people to not use any of the natural resources in the parks for obvious reasons. So my piece was actually inspired by the high density and significant component of the forest, which is the black walnut. So in searching out the medium, the wood that I was going to use, I did have a few pieces of walnut that were around, and one particular piece was in pretty good shape. So I'll try this. I don't know if you can cut to this or not.
Mm-hmm.
But,
Yep.
this is the actual log section that I used, and using a chainsaw, I removed the center section, which you can see right here, the center section, which is where that walnut piece was created from. So to do that, I took the actual core of that log and moved it to this device back here, which is my lathe. And you can't really see the whole thing, but basically it's a device that spins the wood. I'm able to carve away the pieces that should not be there and hopefully leave the pieces that should be there. And in that lathe, you would have a vessel like this, a hollow vessel that would be positioned in the lathe that looks something like this. And then from the end, we would be able to hollow out that piece of wood. And of course, it would be finished, and ultimately you would wind up with a completed hollow vessel, not unlike something like this, which is a different piece made from wood that has a fungus in it, and was made from some river birch that I had several years ago. So that's the general technique on how it's done. What I was planning on doing is trying to get some integration between the actual piece of wood that signifies the forest within the confines of the park of Lake Darling. It is completely surrounded by farmland all around, so it's a nice preserve. And the symbolism that I wanted to do with this piece is to look specifically at a very diagnostic characteristic of the park, and trying to look around. The most diagnostic thing that you can tell about the park is actually the shape of the lake. You can see quite easily, you can see Lake Darling from Google Earth, and it's very, very diagnostic, sort of X-shaped outline. So what I did is relief carved into the surface of the walnut the shape of Lake Darling, and that's what you can see. So that is the outline of Lake Darling there that is inset into the actual walnut. And the other symbolism is that because Lake Darling is the centerpiece and the most valuable, the highest value component of that park, due to the participation of the people who camp there and recreate on the lake with the boating and fishing and so on, it is the most valuable part of the park. So on the surface of the wood that was relief carved, the piece is actually gilt. The shape of Lake Darling is gilt in 22-karat gold leaf, which is the surface that you can see there. The other thing that symbolism is that it's not just one tree or one species of wood, but all trees have value, both conservation value, intrinsic value of beauty, value to wildlife. So the beauty within basically symbolizes that within every tree that we have, there is intrinsic beauty. And this is the reason for the bark surround, I'll call it, where the finished piece, the actual hollow vessel, is set into the piece from which it came. And this is the symbolism, I think, behind part of the conservation efforts that the DNR has, as well as the appreciation that the public should have for all of those natural resources. So that's the inspiration for the beauty within. And thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this wonderful project. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. And we did have a couple questions come in for you, but it looks like you answered them as you gave that wonderful talk. So we will keep Rob on with us till the end as well. So if you have any other questions for him, please feel free to send them throughout. Oh, wait, it looks like we do have more for you.
Yeah, apologies. A couple came in. Michael Moraine was wondering about all of the other gadgets behind you. If you can describe that a little bit more for us.
How many days do you have, Michael? This is one of my 4 positions that I have different lathes in my shop. The devices that are back here, these are an array of different tools that are used. The real powerhouse is that I have here is actually, if I can show you, this is the actual main gouge. This is my go-to tool that I use for hollowing out most of the wood. So what the system that I have here, it's built-in dust collection that you can see here. So that's a vacuum system that pulls the wood dust away as I'm finished. A number of these other tools are for specialty cuts and refinement and that kind of a thing. But this is a typical installation of a wood turner who does this kind of sort of specialized woodworking.
That's great, thank you. And one more question that came in, I'm not sure I totally understand it, but someone asked, is that piece from your fungus application? And then they said, introduction of spores to the wood, question mark.
Okay, let me go back to that one. This is a piece of wood that was actually growing next door to me for about 15 years until they had to take it down. This is my neighbor's river birch. The wood itself did not have fungus in it, but I actually take pieces of wood in my backyard and I introduce spores to it and grow the fungus in the wood, which produces all of these wonderful black lines. The process is called spalting. So the wood then, once the fungus grows in the wood and produces those lines, then I can harvest that, dry it out, and then produce the pieces like this. So it's a natural process. The fungal invasion is a natural process, but I tend to try to enhance it by giving the fungus good cultural conditions that basically farming the fungus in the wood to produce these lines. And these can be very, very natural looking, very organic, but also very attractive. And then of course, this is a dyed piece that has yellow and red dyes in a gradient. So this is not the natural color of the wood. It would be really cool if it was, but it's not. This is an after addition. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yes, I think so. Thank you, Rob. All right. So with that, then we're going to take it back to John Mark in the gallery.
So this piece is by Anna Segner called Midsummer. It's acrylic on canvas, and it was based on her residency at Rock Creek State Park.
And this park is in Kellogg, Iowa.
Now we're going to move over to Jennifer Drinkwater, who did acrylic paint on wood panel. These are called Dockside and Sprout. based on Pine Lake State Park in Eldora. This is the second sprout.
We did have a question, John Mark, for you come in. Could you tell the audience a little bit about Polk County Heritage Gallery?
Well, I would love to. Yes, Polk County Heritage Gallery. We've been around for about 40 years in the Polk County Administrative Building on Court Avenue, right by the river. And we do a series of exhibits all year long. Kind of our biggest sort of monumental exhibits are our juried expositions. We have a juried exposition for Des Moines area artists, a juried exhibition for all Iowa artists, and then we also have a thematic photo exhibit yearly. So we put hundreds of Iowa artists in our gallery every year, and we're really proud to be what we think of as sort of a crown jewel of exhibits and of galleries in Des Moines. Not everyone manages to last for 40 years, so.
That's wonderful. We're happy to have you here.
And we are happy to have this exhibit as well. This is Paula Streeter, The Lodge, Gold Point State Park, acrylic paint on linen.
Hey, John Mark, can we go back to Anna's piece really quick? We had a question on Facebook. Someone was wanting to see the numbers on Anna's piece with a little bit more detail and was kind of wondering if those were written in cursive. Okay, so I see the 6 and the 7. Awesome, thank you for that detail.
Mm-hmm. And the next, we're going to go back to you, Veronica, for Austin Stewart and Omar de Coke Mercado.
All right, so before we turn it over to them, I'm actually going to share the video with everyone just so you can get a better look at the video in person here on the screen. All right, and here are our presenters, so whenever you want to jump in, feel free.
Omar, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Go for it.
So, hello everyone. So this is a project that Omar and I worked on collaboratively. What you're looking at is essentially 4 iterations of video, the same video footage that has been manipulated both by us, like with our aesthetic choices, but then also with data that we collected. And so we were at Brushy Creek State Park, and we set up 3 sensor stations in the park for a full moon cycle it was from mid-July till mid-August last year. And we recorded daily, temperatures every minute. We recorded movement of the sensor stations. We had a big wind vane made out of umbrellas that I assume you've probably seen some images of. And so we recorded all of that data in one of the meadows or prairies that's at Brushy Creek. And so one of the sensor stations was in the middle of the prairie. One was on the edge, and the other one was actually just inside a wooded area to the side of that. So we were able to overlay those different data streams, the different temperature variations. One of the temperature sensors was actually buried in the ground, about 6 or 8 inches deep. And so we were able to overlay those as we did these different iterations of the video. One more, you want to jump in?
Sure. So Austin and I share a studio space, and Austin is sitting there right now, and that rig behind him is a combination of an analog and digital audio and video synthesizer. And so it's a fancy word for a lot of knobs, jacks, and blinking lights that you have to patch together like an old telephone patch bay to connect signals. So we use that setup to take that raw video that we collected, which is the top left. And then we started manipulating it with the data that we collected from the wind vane. And as we're coming down on the wind vane, after this scene, you'll actually see what it looks like. And it's just 4 umbrellas on a bicycle rim on a staff. And then we hooked a sensor array up to that. So it's kind of a funny, it's a sculptural piece that is actively collecting data. And then we took all of this video footage at the park, which is, it was fun to manipulate it with all the info that we had. So the resolution on this live feed, at least for me, isn't very high. We do have the post up on YouTube because the original footage is shot in HD and then it's manipulated through analog. So you lose resolution and it degrades as we get down to the bottom right. So I would recommend checking it out on YouTube. The piece is called Steganos, which is a play off the word how do you say that, Austin? I always kind of stumble on that. Steganography? Something
Yeah, I can't help you there.
Steganography, which is, it's the art form of hiding a file within inside of a file. And what we wanted to do with this piece was, highlight the fact that everyone's perception of Iowa State's parks are a little different, just like everyone's perception of the world is different, and just as everyone's perception of art is different. We wanted to highlight the idea of nesting systems inside of systems, and kind of figuring out a way how can we explore the hidden world through data while manipulating video that we've actually collected at the park. So it's kind of a fun way of taking things that we can't see and putting them on a palette that we can see.
Yeah, and this is really, we've been wanting to collaborate for a number of years. We've known each other for about 5 years now. And this is really the first kind of product of that collaboration. And we've been, it's been really great, and we're excited to do more work like this together.
All right, thank you. Let's see here. All right. It doesn't look like we had any questions come in, so we will then take it back to John Mark in the gallery.
This next piece is by Joe Minch. It's a diptych, passage, and vessel, mild steel chased, based on the mines of Spain State Park. Our next piece is by Nancy Thompson on Wesley Creek. It's called Wesley Creek Triptych, based on Lacey Keosauqua State Park in Van Buren County. I'm gonna back up to let you see the whole thing and then show you a little bit more close up.
And I'll just extend another thank you to Nancy. She was one of our contacts at Iowa State University who helped spearhead this project. So we appreciate all of her efforts in getting this off the ground. Nancy is also a plein air painter, so she paints on site in the parks when she is working. So it's fun for regular park attendees to stumble upon her and see her progress throughout the day.
And I don't think I mentioned this is acrylic painting on gallery wrap canvas. And then the next piece is video by Thera Erdem, Kite Chair Surroundings based on Lake McBride. So Veronica, were you going to show that one?
Yep, I will take it from here. All right, let me pause that really quick. There we go. Okay, back to you, John Mark.
All right. This next piece, again, I'll do the best I can with reflections on the glass. This is Carol Faber, Fall Prairie. It's a digital print based on Stone State Park.
And Stone State Park is up in Sioux City. Carol was one of a number of artists who were also featured in Iowa PBS's Iowa Outdoors. They did a program that celebrated the 100th anniversary as well. And luckily, a handful of our artists who are participating in this exhibit were featured. So you can see video footage of them working in their parks if you go to Iowa PBS's website to see that.
And I should note that there's a series of 4 digital prints here, so you'll see a little bit of all of them. This one is called Prairie Tapestry. This one is called Autumn River. And this one is called Woodland. All right, and then our next piece here is Christopher Yanulis, Pilot Knob State Park in Forrest City, Hancock County.
Okay, and we'll go directly to that video then so our viewers can listen to it.
Pilot knob, the knob hill itself would have been used by early European settlers as a navigation point as they made their way westward across the open sea of grass and prairie wetlands. The knob would have towered above the surrounding geography as a beacon that was used to assist them in their travels. In the mid-1930s, specifically 1934, the Civilian Conservation Corps, the CCC, had a large impact on Pilot Knob State Park. In the summer of 1934, the CCC is responsible for constructing the amphitheater area of the park on the east end of the park. They also erected the observation tower, which was built primarily of local glacial till boulders. They constructed the entrance portals at the east and the west entrance, and the gates that are at the entrances to the park. They constructed the stone shelter, which is a common place for gatherings in the park. And they also constructed what we refer to as Three Bridges Trail.
The things
All right. So we will, with that, take it back to John Mark in the gallery. And for those who are curious, Lindsay on Facebook has been sharing links directly to the videos. So those of you who are interested can view the full videos either through those links, or you can see all of the videos on our YouTube channel at Iowa Culture. And there are also links to the full videos there.
So this is a mixed media on wood panel by the same artist, Christopher Yanulis. Same park, Pilot Knob State Park. And this is a series of photographs on archival board thread sewing findings by Olivia Valentine, named Field Edgings, based on Viking Lake State Park. So here we go. I'm gonna try and get nice and close. And then we're coming around the corner to Deborah Pappenheimer. Architectural Navigators, hand-dyed organza, embroidery, thread, fabric, based on Walnut Woods State Park here in Polk County.
And we did have a question come in as to whether or not these artworks would go back to their parks. And we don't have any plans to do that yet, although it's not out of the question. I will say, though, that some of the artists have already had success in selling their work. So the work will be with us for the duration of the exhibits and then off to their new owners. But that's definitely something we can consider when the social distancing ends.
And then we have more fiber. This is from Amy Harris. It's called Without End, inspired by Lake of Three Fires State Park in Bedford, Taylor County.
John Lemons, who also works with the Polk County Heritage Gallery, documented this current exhibit through photography, and that photo album is posted on our Facebook page. So to see additional detail of some of these works, you can also visit our Facebook page to see the full album of the works in the gallery as well.
And here we have Kimberly Moss, wood, watercolor, colored pencil, digital rendering, based on Backbone State Park in Dundee, Delaware County. And there's some interesting things about this, but I'm gonna wait until Kimberly tells me to show you.
Yes, we have Kimberly with us today as well. So let me just switch over to her video really quick. There we go. Hello, Kim.
Hello, everybody. I think to start with, I just want to say how lucky I was to get to be able to work at Backbone State Park and visit there. I had never been there before, and so The first time that I went was about this time a year ago, and I found the park incredibly interesting and attractive with all of the varying features. It has incredible biodiversity, and that really drew me in. Not only that, this time of year when you can really see the landscape, you can see the variety of rolling hills and escarpments, xeric glades, valleys, waterways. And so as an artist interested in science, I work at the intersection of science and art. I was drawn to this broader landscape and found it visually striking. And the same time, when I go on a ramble in the woods, I can't but help to be looking at the small details. I'm really drawn into looking at fungi and insects or anything that catches my eye. And when you stop and you take time, what happens is that you can see a whole world of organisms at a smaller level. And what I find is this incredible macro-micro connection. And that's really what this piece is about. And so it has a topographical look from the outside. I've always been drawn to topography. And the lines that represent elevation are giving us a sense of the landscape. And they position us over the landscape and connect us to the landscape and help us orient ourselves in a place like Backbone State Park. But at the same time, we are positioned in one spot. And so these lines also are symbolic of how each part is connected in the ecosystem and our connection to that. And so I think that they're very dynamic and have a way of really threading us through our impact in conserving places like this. And so this piece is meant to be an interactive piece. And John Mark, you can feel free to pull off some of those doors. And so when I'm outside and when I was in Backbone State Park, these are some of the things that I discovered there. A lot of people know Backbone for the trout fishing. It's had a long history of that. And you know, trout they need a particular environment. They need a specific kind of water temperature and cool streams. And I thought it was really special that they can exist there. And so as you work through this piece, I wanted the user to come up and open those doors and have a sense of looking and discovery that I had when I was in State Park. And I hope that it inspires people to slow down when they're in Iowa state parks and to start to notice these things. The piece itself, as John Mark mentioned, includes colored pencil, watercolor, and they're primarily traditional pieces that we're seeing through these windows. Some of them have some digital manipulation too. And they have stylistic and graphical elements that mimic the connection and the lines that permeate the landscape. On the back of the doors, there's also another level of observation. And so words are part of what I'm thinking about, different things that I'm seeing in along these hikes. And so their thoughts, they're expressing some of the connection that I had. So really this is sort of symbolic of not only in State Park, but in Backbone State Park, but all of the different ways that as we sit in Iowa, how we're connected to and impact what we see there. This particular one here is a barred owl that I saw fly overhead and then land on a branch. And I'm just gonna read the poem that goes with this one. Non-migratory, one aerial survey knows change over time. Will you give us your ocular testimony? Who stands for these mature stands? Oak and white pine, extending optimal limbs, knowing talons, the shift of weight. Metered, bobbing, ducking round head. The bars circle deep, pupils full, pupils pool, accentuating the facial discs, a soft cushion awaiting waves. It's your watch, Strix Varia, to calculate the night. Know now the transformation and tell all. The wood panel was done with pyrography, which is basically using a stylus to burn in the lines, and also has colored pencil overlaid or rendered on to show the water areas. The water areas are so important, not only to all of Iowa, but in Backbone State Park. The Maquoketa River has carved through, and so we can see this main feature is the Backbone Trail itself, and it really does stand out in an impressive way that was especially visually striking to me. And so I wanted to be sure to capture that, and I hope that it's also recognizable to the viewers. And so I think that's all I have, but mostly just wanted to say thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Kim. You did such a good job speaking. The question that we did have come in for you, you answered it at the end with the where the backbone was in the overall image of the work. So thank you for that. It doesn't look like we have anything else coming in just yet, so we will keep you on and turn it back over to John Mark, but thank you for that wonderful explanation of work. It's kind of fascinating how many layers there are to your piece that aren't entirely visible when you just approach it. So thank you.
Thanks.
So here we have some more video from Clark Colby, Stevens State Forest Park in Sheridan, Lucas County. The work is called Around the Park.
Yes, and I will switch to that video, and we also have Clark with us. So give me just a moment to switch over, and then we'll bring Clark back to speak with everyone.
Good afternoon, evening, everybody. Can you hear me all right? Let's see, start my video.
I hear you.
All right. So I had Stevens State's Forest. I have been interested in the state parks and the natural environment for most of my life. And so every time I get a chance to go out and experience these incredible places, I struggle to share that experience with other people. And so through this artwork, I traditionally work with a DSLR camera, so this style of camera, and I create these large panoramic photographs. But this go around, I decided to work with video, and so I worked with a 360-degree camera that does video work. And I've edited the video in a way that you can see a 360-degree panorama. So you're able to look in all directions at once. And the hope of that is that I can share what it feels like to be in this place. Maybe you can imagine yourself lying on the grass about where the camera is placed and kind of staring up at the trees and the sky. Hopefully you can maybe hear some of the chirping birds or the frogs or the wind blowing, or maybe you can hear some of my footsteps as I pass the camera on the trail. And so all of these things are what it feels like to be in Stevens State Forest. And so this was my attempt at really sharing what it feels like to be at that place. It's kind of difficult to explain to people when you go and visit these places, but this artwork was an attempt at providing that firsthand experience in a perspective that we don't get to traditionally see in our everyday livelihoods. So if there are any questions, I guess I can show you the camera I have both. So this is the 360 camera. So it's got two lenses. I don't know if you can see the lights. It's got one lens on this side and one lens on the other side. And this would be your traditional DSLR camera. So with this camera, I would be creating the work with a stitch, so a series of images. And with this camera, I can create the work with just a single camera and a single vantage point. And so it really opens up opportunities on sharing this perspective and placemaking with people. So those are the big things I had. If there's any questions, drop them in the comments and I'd be happy to answer them later. So.
Hey, Clark, did you happen to map out the path that you were walking? I know you kind of stray from that eventually, but how did you work that out?
I did. It was meant to be a spiral. I had to deviate a little bit from the spiral as both trees and the landscape prevented me from doing the spiral. But it was supposed to kind of be a concentric spiral out and then a concentric spiral back. And that was hopefully to, as the viewer, as you're watching me circumnavigate the image, I'm getting further and further away from you. So I'm getting smaller and smaller. And my hope was that as the viewer, you're going to step closer to the video and closer to the work and really kind of immerse yourself in that perspective and in that experience. And then as I get closer, maybe you would step back and you would again see the whole image. So good question.
Great, thank you. We also had a question come in from, I assume, someone you know, that says, "Where's Luca?"
He is in the van with Kristen. So Kristen's right here. Oh, where's Luca right now? He was bothering us right before it was my turn to speak, so I was worried, but he is now on the couch and hanging out. So
Luca's our dog.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That came from Leah, so I'm assuming Leah's saying hello.
Yes.
All right, thank you guys. Kristen and Clark will stay on with us too. So now I will turn it back over to John Mark.
And we have just 2 pieces left. This is Nancy Thompson, Stone Bridge at Eli Ford Crossing, a la Prima pastel on pastel paper. And this is Lacey Keosauqua State Park. And then the last piece of our exhibit is Brent Holland, Upper Dance Hall, digital print, acrylic paint, acrylic ink, epoxy resin. This is based on Maquoketa Caves State Park in Maquoketa, Jackson County. So back out here. And that's what we have here, Veronica. I'm happy to go back and look at anything else, or if there are any other questions that for artists. Or
Okay, if you want to just take it back out to a final look at the gallery, I think that would be great. We will stay on the line. I'm going to unmute all of our wonderful presenters today. So we'll give everyone just a minute to submit any last minute questions. But otherwise, I want to thank John Mark again for serving as our wonderful tour guide at the Polk County Heritage Gallery. Thanks to Julie Tacht and Todd Kofelt from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources for providing our welcome, and to Lindsay Keast from the Iowa Arts Council for assisting with our Q&A tonight. And thanks again to the artists who participated today for sharing more about their work and their processes. You can learn more about the artists and the state parks at our website, iowaculture.gov/arts, We have a profile of each of the participating artists, as well as each of the state parks that were selected. And you can find out more about the State Parks 2020 Centennial celebrations, as Todd mentioned, at iowadnr.gov/parks 2020. We did have one question come in that said, how long will the show be up? It was scheduled to be up through mid-May here at the Polk County Heritage Gallery. And then it was supposed to move on to Dubuque after that. Right now, we're kind of just waiting to see how things go and see whether or not we'll be able to make that transition. My hunch is no, but we will adjust accordingly as we need to throughout the year. We did have one question come in for all of our artists. So if anyone wants to take the lead on it, just let me know and I'll switch over to you. What was your favorite part of the residency or process working in the parks? So you're all unmuted, so just holler at me if you want to answer it and I'll switch over to your video.
I have one story that I can share, Veronica. This is Kristen.
Okay.
So Clark and I were walking through the woods. We went off trail a little bit and he called me back. I was in front. He found 2 baby deer that we think were born that day because they were still wet and they were, yeah, like this big, curled up in little balls on the floor in the leaves. And there wasn't, we were there, since we were there in early May, there wasn't a ton of undergrowth yet. So it was really easy to see them and they were so beautiful. That was really fun.
And since the video's on us, I guess for me, I think the intentionality of going to the state park specifically to create an art piece was a really interesting experience. Usually, maybe you're visiting the park for inspiration, but not necessarily to create an artwork about the park. And so it was really a great experience to go with a level of intention to create artwork about the park for this project.
Excellent, thank you. Does anyone else want to jump in with their favorite part of the process?
This is Omar. I can jump in on mine.
Okay, hold on just a minute. Let me get your video going here.
Hey, everyone. So yeah, I think my favorite experience, what the data collectors that we used only could store so much data. I think it was like a 4 or 5 day period. So every 4 or 5 days we had to go back and harvest the data. Yeah, sorry about my dogs. They're chomping and playing back there. But so yeah, we'd have to come back and collect the data, and either Austin or I would do it separately because have busy schedules. But one evening I got to go out there and there was a thunderstorm rolling in over Brushy Creek State Park, and it was really fun to sit there and watch the wind vane start turning as the storm was coming in, and the lightning bugs were flickering, and it was just a very beautiful time. And I was really grateful that I got to be there because we were creating art for this commemoration. So that was probably my favorite part.
Excellent, thank you. And I also wanted to point out that Omar did the audio for our video tour that you can find on our Facebook page and on our YouTube. So thanks to Omar for doing that. I did have a question about that in relation to the video you made. Was the process for making the audio track for the video similar at all to the process that you guys use to make the visuals for your actual video?
So the audio that's in the file that I gave you guys is just just a one-off thing. Eventually, Austin and I sorry, I back up here. Austin and I had intended to take all of that data and do the same thing with audio, but we never got to that stage. So long story short, they're separate entities.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Does anyone else want to jump in?
Veronica, I'd be happy to say a quick something.
Oh, sure.
This is Kim.
There we go.
Yeah, I mean, I had lots of great adventures in the park, and there's just, I feel like there's so much more to explore and to enjoy at Backbone. Much of the time that I spent there, I was by myself. And so like other artists, I had an opportunity to be really reflective about the landscape. And I found myself thinking about the history of the park and thankful for the founders making it the first state park of Iowa. And that how that was, and that it has been preserved and taken care of for so long. And so what I saw certainly has changed over 100 years, but I felt this kind of deeper connection, and I thought probably other visitors and all the impact that they've had there, like the CCC, we're part of this, and I was thankful to be able to share in that and to respond to it through art.
Excellent. Thanks, Kim. All right, well, with that, it looks like we're over our time by just a little bit today, but we wanted to thank everybody for joining us. We encourage you to continue to support your Iowa artists and your state parks during this time, from a safe social distance, of course. And thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and take care.